Welcome to episode 1 of Professor's Research, a Pokemon Pocket podcast hosted by myself and Spraggles. And today we're going to be diving into what we think about Misty, how it should be changed, if it should be nerfed or banned, and just going in depth with some of the math and how the card should work. Also, if you guys enjoyed today's episode, we have another episode launching at the same time as this one. So make sure to click the link in the description. It's over on Spraggles' channel, and we'll be discussing some new upcoming leaks for Pokemon Pocket. All right, so let's talk about Misty.
Let's do it, dude. I cannot wait. This has been such a controversial card since the start of the game, and it still has a lot of controversy around it. So hit me with it.
Yeah, so I did some math and I calculated the odds of, well, actually, first off, let's just go over what Misty does and kind of how the card works, just in case you're unfamiliar. I'm sure that's probably very few people watching this video. But Misty says, choose one of your Pokemon, flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, take an energy from your energy zone and attach it to that Pokemon. And each flip obviously is a 50% chance of being heads or tails. And I did some math. Here's some example probabilities. If you flip 1 heads and then tails, there's a 25% chance of that happening. 2 heads and then tails is a 12% chance. 3 heads, then tails is 6%. 4 heads and then tails is 3%. So the process can, in theory, go on forever, infinite energy. There's no upper limit, but it's just decreasing probability. But I think that is the issue, is that it has infinite potential.
Yeah, it's really tough, right? I think one of the biggest problems with Misty, and in some ways it's actually maybe one of the reasons the card is so genius, which we could talk about later, but one of the biggest problems is you remember every time someone hits you with a Misty, 4 heads, turn 1 on Palkia, and it's over right there. You don't as often remember all the times, 50% of the time, right?
Yeah.
All the times that they get absolutely nothing out of that card. There are a lot of times this card bricks, but for all the times it does work, even 1 extra energy, right? Even having, it's like 1 extra turn. That is a crazy amount of energy. So I do recognize why it's been such a frustrating card for so long. It can be game changing, and it's the only thing really that ends the game on turn 1.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think for me personally, I'm leaning more on the side of we need to do something about this card. So my issues with the card is, now I've talked about this on stream before. There's been a couple rage moments after I just lose on turn 1. But my first issue is the unbalanced energy acceleration. Energy management is crucial in this game, and the potential to attach unlimited energy in a single turn, it can create some unfair power spikes. Like, I remember so many games where I'm snowballing, I'm in the lead, and then last second they have Articuno out, they flip 4 heads on Misty, and then the game just instantly ends. And that is the worst feeling ever because it's such an intense game. Also, like, it's completely luck based, which is, I mean, a lot of this game obviously, and I would just in general want to see less coin flips, and Misty is just running every single water deck, so you're going to see it all the time. Also, it gives you an insane turn 1 advantage. Because you can use it right away. You don't have to pay a cost for using it. You just activate it, turn 1, have 1 Pokemon out. I've died to Articuno so many times just immediately because they flip like 3 heads and use Blizzard on me. And there's just no counterplay either, because there's very few cards in this game that allow you to discard energy or like prevent energy attachment. I know there's like Fearow, but they don't really see any use. So there's no counterplay to Misty either. They just, if they get lucky, it's game over sometimes. So that is why I think those are my points for maybe changing the card. I do have some against changing it, but I want to hear what you think about those first.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're totally right. The biggest issue I have with Misty is that so many water cards have been balanced around this card, right? Like everything that uses water energy needs 90 energy to do anything because they recognize how powerful Misty can be. It's weird. I'm kind of 2 minds on it, where I recognize it's dumb, and it would probably be better for it to have never existed. But now it's weird because we live in a world where it does exist, and they still are going to make water cards. So they're still going to balance them around Misty until maybe one day it kind of comes out of rotation, right? And then everything from Genetic Apex is possibly gone, Misty included in that bunch. Right now, though, one thing I will say, okay, from a competitive standpoint, Misty does not make any water deck so good that it is like the meta. So I do
That's
think
true.
that's interesting. You know, like Darkrai Magnezone requires no Misty. Like like I mean, Magneton is like Misty like 2.0, 3.0. Like it's so crazy. So it doesn't
get me
make
into
the
that.
game it doesn't make the game so imbalanced that we have to drop it right away, but it does make individual matches imbalanced. And I actually think they did this intentionally so that even if you aren't skilled at this game, there are certain cards.
Whoa.
Yeah, seriously, I think
I like this take.
I know. I think they set certain things up in this game where you can play a really heady deck and make a lot of like really interesting plays, and you can also play super straightforward decks, and you can play a situation where you just get a little lucky and you actually pull out a win. And I think it's convinced more people to stick with the game than it has annoyed enough people to leave. I could be wrong about that. I have no idea what the numbers are, but I almost like Misty feels like a card to me that was created with a casual player base in mind that bricks often enough to where it doesn't destroy the metagame. That's my thought on it. I think they actually designed it for like casual gameplay.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And it kind of, I guess you're right. It did completely warp the water archetype to where like we have Palkia now, which costs 4 energy to even use. And like, yeah, they obviously are designing like Mamoswine 4 energy for 120 damage. Not amazing, but they designed that. That's like the most obvious example of designing for Misty and for Manaphy, I think, which is in the game now. But you're right. I think over time there will be a power creep. We'll maybe receive like a more powerful version of Manaphy, and then maybe Misty will be kind of phased out. But until that time, I still don't think I'm gonna enjoy, you know, losing on turn 1.
No.
But you're right. It is definitely some casuals. That was actually, so I'm gonna move on to arguments against changing it.
Sure.
And obviously inconsistent by design. It's a 50% chance. It relies on coin flips. And then 2 is it's exciting. You know, it's high risk.
Yeah.
It's gambling, which I know, like, actually, can I say that word on
I don't
YouTube?
see why you couldn't. I think you could.
Okay. I'm like, are we gonna get demonetized? No, but it is gambling and it's exciting. And I think that it makes it fun to, you remember those moments where you're like down by 2 points and then you flip 4 heads on Misty and you have an insane comeback. You remember those, but you also remember when it happens to you. So I think, in my opinion, I would like to have Misty slightly tweaked, because I think we can still experience those highs with it, but it doesn't need to like be able to make you lose on turn 1. You know what I mean? I don't think even casuals want to lose on turn 1.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think that's been its biggest problem is turn 1 Misty, like Genetic Apex, turn 1 Misty on an Articuno is so cheesy. They hit you with Blizzard right away. The weird thing about it is I almost think mentally, and I'm sure this is different for everybody, but I almost think mentally you can almost write that off as like, that's crazy RNG. I didn't lose because of a skill issue. And then when you hit some Misties and win, I don't think it like slots into your brain the same way as like, I didn't outskill them right there. Like, no, you slot that into your brain as a win. Like kind of as you were talking about, you know, you have these moments where it's like, oh my gosh, we hit it. You forget that you actually like didn't use any skill in that moment too. So I do think overall it's probably been crazy enough. It's probably been positive for the game, but I agree with you. I think it would be cool if there was some way to balance it. My biggest complaint about Misty in general is that every water deck essentially must run it because of how Misty is designed. I know a lot of people have talked about this. I wonder if there would be a cap on the amount of energy it could give. Like maybe it could give a maximum of 2. It would still be crazy. I mean, that's 2 turns worth of energy. Yeah. But that could be something. And then there's also a possibility that they don't let people play Misty turn 1. I'm not really sure how you would fix that either, but you could set up a situation where you can't Misty turn 1. Maybe that is a possible fix. Have you thought of any way that you would want the card changed?
I have thought about this a lot, because there's been a lot of, like I said, moments where I'm like, oh my, they need to do something about this. But I see where you're kind of leaning. You're actually leaning more toward Misty's fine. It's fun part of the gameplay, and you're kind of convincing me a little bit too, I'm gonna be honest. But here's what I thought of for how you could maybe tweak the card slightly. Okay, so you can limit like you just said, you can limit the maximum energy attached. I think most people thought of that, but still, it is kind of game breaking, just even 2 energy.
Totally.
But I think what would be nice is if it required a cost to use. So like you need to discard 1 energy to activate Misty.
Ooh.
Now, maybe that would make it too bad, but that's why instead of that, we could, as we see now, we have supporter cards that pull energy from the discard zone. I think maybe if Misty only pulled the energy, not from the energy zone, but the discard pile. So like that meant you had to use it on like turn 3 or something. So it ends up being just a really good late game card. Or if you're running like a stage 2 deck, you get it right before you get into like all of your energy, because maybe you have a Pokemon that loses energy early, or I think that might be a nice way to balance it. Maybe those would make it too bad to use, but I do think they would still be usable, and you wouldn't see them in every single water deck.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a really cool idea. Is yeah, maybe 1 energy of it, right, would like comes from your energy zone, but anything after 1 must come from the discard pile. So you could still get 1 energy off it if nothing's been discarded, but you couldn't get anything else. I think some decks would run it, some decks wouldn't. Of course, the big issue with all of this is they created Misty and designed all water cards around it. So now I feel like the only way we're actually going to see changes to Misty is when Misty kind of goes out of rotation. Maybe that entire set is out of rotation. I don't know when they would even do that with Genetic Apex. It's so many like known quantity Pokemon that people would like download the game for the first time to get. But maybe if Genetic Apex is out of rotation, they would design water cards differently, and that would be really cool to see. But older water cards that are not out of rotation yet would have this issue. I think for me, it's not even that I think Misty is great. I do like thinking about like a design philosophy around why they did something, rather than just like, oh, they made a broken card. Like I like to think, oh yeah, they probably made this so that the games, like you talked about, are a little exciting in some ways, do have more RNG in some ways. Because if you download a Pokemon game, especially a Pokemon card game, something you've never messed with before, you immediately get into it. It's super sweaty. You can't win a single match. I think that's the exact opposite feel they were going for with Pocket. They want this to be super accessible. If you've never played a TCG, you can hop in there and hey, you can actually win. Like, oh my gosh, my Zapdos flipped 4 heads. I won the match. Like, I think they put a ton of things in the game for that reason. So I think while Misty strategically, and my chat was arguing about this right before we started recording this podcast, like strategically it makes some situations worse, I do think it might be healthy for the game in like a very counterintuitive way. When you first look at it, you think that's unhealthy for the game, but it actually might be healthy to keep a lot of people playing the game who are not as sweaty as maybe someone who's like playing in a Pocket tournament every day.
Well, yeah, you're right. No, I think so too. I do think they designed this game because so I played, just to give some background, I played Master Duel and Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links for the last like 8 years. And the issue with that game at this point is if you hop into it, you need to be a lawyer to like understand what's going on, how to play. And every time they release a new pack, you have to upgrade to that new pack. You have to buy those new cards, or you're just not going to have the best deck anymore. But what I love about, I was kind of worried about that too before they dropped this new pack. I know this is going a little bit off topic.
No, not at all. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, before they dropped this new pack, I was kind of worried about the power creep because they release so many cards per pack, and more than any other game I've seen. We've received like over 100 new cards, and I thought to invest in that and collect all those cards, it was going to be super expensive. People wouldn't be able to compete anymore. But that's just not the case, because we're seeing in tournament results that there's still these older decks that are performing very well. And really all this new expansion did was just make older decks have new support. You know what I mean? Like you can still run Articuno, but you can throw in Palkia now. You can run Starmie, it's still going to be good. There's you can just run Pikachu, it's still a top tier deck. But if you want to, you can run Pachirisu in there now too. So I know it's completely off topic of Misty, but I think they're doing a fantastic job of keeping it like super casual. And the way they handled the power creep and just made everything integrate so well together was really surprising. I'm glazing very hard right now, but compared to other TCGs I played, they did a really good job at that. So I think you're right that they're way more focused on the casual aspect than any other TCG I've seen. And I think a lot of the times when we're on stream and in the comment sections of our videos, we might get caught up too much in the competitive side of things because that's what maybe some of the more hardcore people are telling us. But I do think you're right. After this discussion, I had issues with Misty, but man. I think
I turned it around
from a casual gameplay. I think you might be right. Now, I still would love to see maybe a slight tweak to where you can't win in turn 1. I think that I just don't enjoy that. Or like, I don't know. I feel like they could slightly adjust it and it might make it better, but I don't think it's the end of the world that it is the way it is. So that's what I think about it.
Yeah, I like your idea for adjustments. For me, perfect world, they don't put this card in right at the start. They don't balance everything in water around it. But you're right. I mean, just to give like a little context to some of the stuff you were talking about, Mythical Island added 68 cards, and then Spacetime Smackdown added 155 cards. We have a new set coming out soon enough, and yeah, they are adding a ton of cards, and I do think they've done a really good job of balancing a lot of it. There are clearly things that are better than others, right? But they have created a reality where if there's something you like, especially with Pokemon, like people have a favorite Pokemon or a favorite type, like there's something that you can play and you can win with. And Misty is one of the cheesiest mechanics in the game that has stuff like that available. But I do think what you were saying about not worrying as much about things that are only meta, like we make a lot of content on the game. I play the game a ton. If I only made meta content, if I only focused on like the few things that were good, literally every single deck would be blank featuring Magnezone right now, right? So I do think there needs to be some space for maybe things that are, more RNG heavy, maybe things that are not as good, but like you're excited about. Especially considering there's no ranked ladder. So you don't need to grind the highest win rate thing over and over and over again to get some sort of like cosmetic or something. So Misty, it feels like, while not perfect, I actually think it was probably the card they discussed and thought the most about when creating this game. And then decided that that was the kind of game they were going to create. And I know for some people that's going to really annoy them, but I actually think Misty is a huge part of this game's design philosophy.
Wow. Okay. That is a very spicy take. Now, a lot of people in the comments
right now.
Yeah. And I like your Magnezone comment too. I agree. And I think we need to talk about that maybe in a future podcast episode. But this is Misty today, and I think we got everything out that we needed to say. I want to hear what you guys think about the card. Let me know in the comments below. And of course, every single week, this same day, what day did we say we were going to do it?
I'm not sure, but every single week on a certain day, this is going to happen.
Yeah, so make sure that you're here watching these episodes. We put them out at the same time on both of our channels. There will be an end card with his video, so make sure you go check that out. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching.
Bye.